Black Americans have been fighting for reparations since the end of slavery in the mid-19th century. And while the push for reparations has seen renewed interest, particularly in recent years, with discussions taking place at both state and federal levels, it's becoming increasingly clear that Black Americans may never receive reparations for past injustices.
Let's really be clear about that. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit Black people. No.
At least it seems not in California. Let's talk about it. In a significant setback, Governor Gavin Newsom recently vetoed a bill that could have provided long overdue justice to Black families in California. The bill would have allowed Black families to reclaim stolen land or receive compensation. This comes at a time when other states are already making strides to address historical injustices. States like Illinois and North Carolina, for example, have already taken steps to provide reparations to Black Americans. In Evanston, Illinois, the City Council approved a reparations program that uses tax revenue from cannabis sales to fund housing grants for Black residents.
It's a program that residents, like 87-year-old Dolores Holmes, say is righting historic wrongs.
We bought this house in 1961. You know, you couldn't get a mortgage because the banks wouldn't give you mortgages.
The banks wouldn't loan you
Absolutely.
money. Why?
Because you're Black. What else? What else? You have jobs, you're working, you could pay it.
Decades ago, like many Black people, Holmes says she and her family were pressured and limited to buying property in the city's 5th Ward. It was a crowded, segregated neighborhood with less valuable land than areas on the shores of Lake Michigan. And banks often refused to loan money to Black families like hers. Today, nationwide, just 45% of Black Americans own their homes, compared with 74% of white Americans, according to the U.S. Census Bureau.
When you think about what could have been, what comes to mind?
Well, the first thing is I would have loved to own this whole block instead of having someone who didn't even live in our community who bought it and developed it. Why couldn't we have done that?
But that dream was stopped.
Absolutely.
You think it's because of racism?
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, in Asheville, North Carolina, the city committed to a long-term program to invest in Black communities, addressing systemic disparities. These state and local programs serve as models for what can be done when political will aligns with the fight for racial justice. Evanston's housing grants, for example, focus on correcting the impacts of housing discrimination, while Asheville's approach involves community investment aimed at reducing disparities in education, healthcare, and employment. But while other states are moving forward, California remains in a state of limbo. Newsom's veto of the reparations bill, which was backed by the California Legislative Black Caucus, cited the absence of an appropriate state agency to oversee the claims process.
This bill asks a non-existent agency to carry out its provisions, making it impossible to implement.
Though Newsom's veto slowed the momentum, it has not stopped the fight. The Black Caucus, led by Senator Stephen Bradford, remains determined to continue advocating for reparations and to reintroduce the necessary legislation to create a state reparations agency. However, many are frustrated that while other groups like undocumented immigrants are receiving expanded resources in California, Black Americans are still waiting for direct action on reparations. As the state prioritizes healthcare, education, and protections for undocumented immigrants, advocates are questioning why Black Americans, particularly those affected by land theft and systemic racism, are not receiving the same urgency.
Let's really be clear about that. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit Black people. No.
These comments, combined with the stalled reparations efforts, have raised doubts about whether Black Americans will ever see targeted reparative actions from state and national leaders. Many believe the lack of a clear commitment reflects much deeper systemic challenges in addressing racial inequities. So what's next for reparations? As the debate continues, the question remains, will Black Americans ever receive the justice they fought for, or will other priorities take precedence? The fight for reparations isn't over, but the path forward is definitely uncertain. Stay informed, stay engaged, and stay active. The exhausting and perplexed fight for justice continues. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for any future updates, and I'll see you in the next video.